Welcome to this edition of CBN News Weekend. I'm Charlene Aaron. The Supreme Court could announce this month that same-sex marriage will be legal nationwide. And if they do, what happens to all those people and places who oppose gay marriage for religious reasons, like Christian schools? As Paul Strand reports, many are deeply concerned.
There's reason to believe the full weight of the federal government could come crashing down upon gay marriage opponents.
It's a scary thought, but a day may be coming when institutions like Christian colleges that proclaim they only believe in one man, one woman marriage may be considered as abhorrent as racist. But what the government had to say at the Supreme Court proves that day may be coming very soon.
Republican Senator Mike Lee is so concerned by what he heard in the arguments over same-sex marriage at the Supreme Court, he brought these leaders of Christian education together to warn the nation about it. During those arguments, the Obama administration's Solicitor General made a statement that has sent chills through religious institutions that support traditional marriage.
One of the questions that I thought was particularly insightful was asked by my former boss, Justice Alito.
Alito asked, in the Bob Jones case, the court held that a college was not entitled to tax-exempt status if it opposed interracial marriage or interracial dating. So would the same apply to a university or a college if it opposed same-sex marriage? The Solicitor General replied, "It's certainly going to be an issue. I don't deny that. I don't deny that, Justice Alito. It is. It is going to be an issue." And that means the government could start taking tax-exempt status from any college and possibly other nonprofit organizations that don't back same-sex marriage. The Family Research Council's Travis Weber takes that possibility very seriously.
If he's admitting this, they're considering it, if not already decided, to proceed along those lines.
Could this actually kill some Christian colleges?
I do think there's a very real possibility of it. I think the impact will be significant.
At his Union University in Tennessee, President Dub Oliver says government taking away all the federal benefits enjoyed by the college and students these days could affect about a third of the funding.
When you add all of that up, it's about $30 million a year, and our budget is $90 million. So that's a massive hit.
Weber warns government will even feel it's doing the right thing attacking these institutions.
The government wants to stigmatize them as backwards and somehow out of touch.
So Senator Lee is proposing a bill that would forbid government using its power or influence against opponents of gay marriage.
We need to draw lines around the power of government, lines that are there to protect the people from the overpowering influence of government, an overpowering influence that can, from time to time, trample on religious freedom.
It's ironic that a nation where all the first colleges were Christian, that same nation may soon drive many of today's colleges right out of business. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
The president of the National Religious Broadcasters wonders if the Supreme Court does legalize same-sex marriage, whether the broadcast licenses of Christian stations will be at risk if they don't support it. British Columbia will consider removing gender from birth certificates after a group of activists called it discriminatory. According to CTV News, the Trans Alliance Society says people who are assigned to one gender on a birth certificate but identify as another are more likely to face discrimination and bullying. TAS Chair Morgan Oger said birth certificates may give false information about people and characterize them in a way that is actually wrong. And it's considered true and infallible when it isn't. Another media outlet, Hot Air, reports the Human Rights Tribunal of British Columbia responded, saying it will consider completely eliminating gender designations from birth certificates. Gender dysphoria, also called transsexualism or transgender, is when a person feels they are not the gender they physically appear to be. And this isn't limited to adults like Bruce Jenner, who's been all over network news channels with his identity change, but it's also affecting children. Some even take hormone blockers to delay puberty until they decide how they want to live. One man who's dealt with this personally and now works to educate others on the realities of this practice says it's especially dangerous for young people.
These puberty blockers are powerful. They're synthetic hormones. We know synthetic hormones can increase cancer risk. They interfere with bone and muscle development, but they also interfere with our thinking. During puberty, there's significant brain development that goes on at that point.
Puberty blocking has become an accepted form of medical treatment for kids, especially in the U.S., and you can visit our website to see the rest of that interview. Bruce Jenner is all over the news for his recent sex change surgery and name change to Caitlyn. Caitlin has been hailed a hero by some in the LGBT community. But one man who has changed sexes twice says that the transgender movement has left a trail of misery in its wake. Is sex change surgery the answer to gender dysphoria? Here with us now by Skype is speaker and author of several books addressing sex change regret, Walt Heyer. Walt, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Now, first of all, not only have you done extensive research on sex change surgery, you've been through the process yourself, but you say it fixed nothing. What can you share with us about that?
Yeah, when people go through this gender change, there's very high expectations that, their life is just going to be wonderful and everything's going to be great. And I can tell you the way it starts, that was true for me. But then there's a time, what I call, when you kind of begin to sober up and realize that gender reassignment surgery really doesn't make you a female. It's much more to being a woman than just having some cosmetic surgery and hormones.
In your book, Paper Genders, you address gender change regret from a scientific research point of view. Can you give us some highlights about that?
Well, what we know is that when you begin to alter someone surgically who has psychological disorders, we find a predominant number of people who suffer from these issues suffer for the rest of their life, even after a gender change. So we know from not only from Johns Hopkins University, who was the one who launched the surgical program in the United States in 1966, after 10 years of doing the work, they interviewed people who had gone through the surgery and found that it was not effective in changing their attitude and or their life for the better. And this also was played out by Dr. Illenfeld, who worked with Harry Benjamin for 6 years at his clinic, and found that given hormone therapy to transgenders was causing them to have too much unhappiness, in his words, and too many suicides.
How can Christians and the church respond to transgenders and transgenders with regret?
Well, my book, A Transgender's Faith, really details that process and gives the reader and any church members and or church leadership a real good understanding of how to approach transgenders. And we got to remember that there are people who are suffering. I think that's the key element, is not to look at them as people who, many of the people are not homosexual. Many of the people are not seeking the surgery because of sexual issues. These are individuals who have a gender identity issue, and they need the love of Christ and the love of people in church to be able to work through those issues and not be rejected by the church. I was told by one pastor who came to my house, "We don't want your kind in our church." And I kind of smiled at him and said, well, okay, what kind do you want in your church? So we need to be mindful that the church is really the place, it's a hospital for broken people. And as such, we need to be the people who administer assistance and guidance to those people who are suffering. And we don't want to leave them where they are. We want them to be healed and find the source of Christ in their life so that they can be restored as I have been.
Amen. Walt Heyer, thank you so very much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. God bless you.
Thank you.
What has major internet companies like Google, Comcast, and Facebook changing their policies? Well, one major player is the Dirty Dozen list published by the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. The NCSE publishes the Dirty Dozen list, calling out 12 companies, groups, or events linked to sexual exploitation. Haley Halverson, Director of Communications for the NCSE, shares what Google has done to get off the Dirty Dozen list.
That was a great victory for the cause and for the center. They were really great about changing their policies to prohibit pornographic advertisements or advertisements that linked to sexually explicit material. And they also got rid of several apps on Google Play and prohibited pornographic apps.
Pornography is a harmful, mind-altering addiction linked to abuse, sex trafficking, and prostitution. And to learn more about the National Center for Sexual Exploitation and find out how you can help, visit cbnnews.com. Well, 1 out of 6 women have been raped in their lifetime. Another troubling fact, 98% of their attackers never spend one day in jail or prison. As Abigail Robertson reports, that's because evidence has been sitting, gathering dust in police labs and storage rooms across the country until now.
Overwhelmed crime labs, lack of money, and a reluctance to believe rape victims contribute to a nationwide problem. Thousands of untested rape kits, almost 10,000 alone in the state of Ohio.
We owed it to these rape victims to test these.
In 2011, Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine pledged to test all the kits, a move that has generated action. As of May, close to 80% of the untested kits had been analyzed. The results? More than 2,700 DNA matches and 300 arrests, resulting in 79 convictions. On average, each person matched has been linked to 10 crimes, and almost 30% are serial rapists. One of these predators is Dwayne Wilson. Serving time for another charge, Wilson was just 23 days from freedom when a DNA test linked him to a sexual crime spree. 20 years earlier, Wilson had raped multiple victims, often while holding a knife to their throats.
You snatched women off the streets, you took them somewhere else, and you raped them. And you raped them viciously.
Prosecutor Mary Weston credits the discovery to finally testing the rape kits.
It is the only reason that we caught Dwayne Wilson for these crimes.
Lisa Bridges' attacker, Andrew Getson, lived freely for years.
After I was raped, I was broken. That man broke me. And it took years and years and years for God to fix me.
2 decades later, results from her long-neglected kit led to Getson's conviction.
When it came to me with this, it's like my life stopped. It stopped. It's like opening up a wound and pouring a lot of salt on it.
Detroit prosecutor Kim Worthy calls the testing debacle a nationwide embarrassment.
It shows that we as this country do not respect rape victims to the extent that we respect other victims.
There's new hope that more victims will see justice. Last year, Congress approved $41 million to go towards testing neglected rape kits across the country. Each kit has the potential to bring long-awaited closure to victims like Lisa and many others. Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Up next, right in America's breadbasket, 1 in 5 children often goes hungry. And with school out soon for summer, more kids will be feeling the pangs. See what's being done to fight childhood hunger after this. After a long, cold winter, summer is almost here, and most kids are happy about that because it brings vacation from school. But a surprising number of children don't have enough food, even in places you'd never expect. Today marks the kickoff week for a campaign that aims to get food to needy children across the U.S. David Brody brings us that story.
The carefree days of summer, a time for ice cream and dips in the pool. But for millions of American children, these days are far from carefree. When school lets out, hunger can become a reality.
For every 7 kids getting a free or reduced price lunch, only about 1 gets a meal during the summer. So that's a huge gap in terms of participation.
Parents must find creative ways to fill that gap.
When you think about a family's food budget, or family's budget in general, you have your rent or your mortgage, you have your utilities, your transportation costs. These are fixed costs, whereas a food budget is really one of the more flexible parts of the budget.
Leaving parents with a difficult question: pay bills or cut back on groceries? Many turn to the government, which provides a lot of food, but leaves some big gaps. According to Christine Melendez of Bread for the World, the U.S. fills about 19 of every 20 food bags going to needy families. While its summer meal programs reach a lot of city kids, it can leave children in rural areas behind. A recent White House report reveals 1.5 million rural children live in poverty. Case in point, Iowa. middle of the nation's breadbasket, where 1 in 5 children often go hungry.
Iowa is usually known as the political capital of the world, but it could now be known, potentially, as the hunger-fighting capital of the world.
Meet Susan Bunz and Christina Zink, 2 women from different organizations taking up the same fight, ending hunger in Iowa. Bunz enters the battle without government assistance through Meals from the Heartland. The nonprofit Christian organization packages meals for children all over the world. Last year, they provided more than 10 million.
So this is our packaging area. We can have 120 people in here at a time packaging meals. Usually what you'd have is 10 people at each ends of these table. They box at the end. We generally figure that a group of 10 can do 2,000 meals an hour.
Many of those meals are needed right here in Iowa, a fact that surprises outsiders.
There's these gaps and holes, just like any other place, where there's a need for food that isn't being met. Yeah. Why it happens or how you correct it, I'm not sure. Yeah. Our problem is they're kids and adults and elderly. And we leave out the elderly a lot that need meals.
Getting those meals into hungry bellies takes a team effort. First stop is a supply place like the Food Bank of Iowa. This is where Zink steps in.
Our clients are definitely working. 60% work full-time. And of that 60%, 19% work over 40 hours. But hunger really doesn't discriminate, and it takes just one incident to put you at risk. It could be a car repair, a medical emergency, the loss of a job. And it's really not just in the metro either. We have a large rural population that has a lack of resources that we're trying to reach out to.
Through a new initiative, the Food Bank focuses on getting food to some of those rural areas. Zink says partnering with Christian organizations and other agencies helps get food across the state.
It's definitely important for organizations like the Food Bank and our partner agencies and our program partners. We really couldn't do it without them. It really does take a community, and without some of the government support that's on the line right now, it'll take even more of that effort of individual and corporate support to help us feed people.
Effort that comes from groups like CBN's Operation Blessing. The Operation Blessing Hunger Strike Force has a fleet of trucks that distributes food and supplies to needy people. Last year, they delivered 64 million pounds of food and supplies to community-based partners. These partners then work with local food pantries to help get food to hungry families. Even with Christian groups and the U.S. government leading the way, the need remains, says Melendez.
But we can't food bank our way out of hunger. We also can't food stamp our way out of hunger. We're not going to end hunger until we address those kind of root causes. Why is it that families are hungry?
It's a question that remains to be answered, and a reminder that childhood hunger can affect anyone and will take everyone's help to solve. David Brody, CBN News, in Des Moines, Iowa.
Coming up, heroes, villains, special effects, and more. Join me as I take a peek beyond the mask. The new Christian film Beyond the Mask has all the makings of a great action movie. Heroes, villains, special effects, and more. I recently talked with the cast and crew about its message of grace, liberty, and redemption.
While the highly anticipated movie Beyond the Mask is set in colonial times, it offers a mixed bag of modern stunts and explosions. I'm here at the premiere for the Christian movie Beyond the Mask, which is breaking barriers in the film industry by taking a movie about faith into the action and adventure arena.
Call the shot, Mr. Brand. One last time.
Andrew Chaney plays Will Reynolds, a former assassin hoping to rehabilitate his reputation.
You have a guy who's in search of himself and trying to right the wrongs of his past.
Kara Kilmer of NBC's Chicago Fire plays Charlotte, Reynolds' love interest.
She brings something unique that's uniquely feminine and uniquely her to the table, and that's kind of what helps to balance out her and William.
Cousins Chad and Aaron Burns produced and directed the film.
Well, you know, Aaron and I really like action-adventure movies, and so we wanted to make a film, the kind of film that we like to watch. And so that's what we set out to do. And Beyond the Mask is an action-adventure movie. It's got a lot of elements that are not typically in a Christian film.
The former homeschoolers wanted the movie to showcase their love of U.S. history.
Historical depictions such as the signing of the Declaration of Independence and scenes with Benjamin Franklin are included in the film. Stephen Kendrick of Fireproof and Facing the Giants fame helped mentor these young filmmakers through the script writing process. They now hope to inspire a new generation of moviegoers.
We want to reach young people because as this is the theme that God has really taught us in our hearts, these themes of identity and these themes of justification, the themes of hope through relationship with Him.
You are the man that I need there.
I'm done.
You mean that?
Yes.
John Rhys Davis, known for his roles in blockbusters like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Lord of the Rings, plays Sir Charles Kent of the British East India Company. He says the film's compelling script drew him to the project.
It's a good action adventure. And I like swashbuckle. Love the script.
Earlier this year, an advanced showing of the film opened at a record-setting 444-plus theaters nationwide. Yet the message is what these filmmakers hope stands out above all.
Neither redemption or love can ever be earned.
And the swashbuckling drama will be opening tomorrow in 100 cities across the country. And you can see more of my interviews with the cast and crew on CBNnews.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Today, we're getting a look at some pretty miraculous surveillance video out of Brooklyn where a toddler was struck by an out-of-control car. Now, it's hard to watch, but we want to let you know that the child involved with that incident left with only a few bumps and bruises. As you can see here, the car loses control, strikes a small tree, and then runs completely over the child. He survived by landing in between the tires of the car. Eyewitnesses were able to get the car off of the little boy, who they say was conscious and alert. He was taken to the hospital and only suffered minor injuries. Praise God for that. Well, that's all for this hour of the CBN News Weekend. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And stay up to date with CBN News through Facebook and Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless.